Can you talk about issues and concerns surrounding AI?
So I would say the number one key challenge is privacy. It's been a challenge getting through to patients, to care providers, to hospital administrators that their information is safe. So what we've had to do is prove that we're actually anonymizing the data, we're de-identifying it from the patient themselves, and then blending it into the system. So that's something that we've had to educate our users on to kind of get through that barrier, because it is information that we need. We do need their information in order to provide the better health outcomes.
Yeah, so any new technology produces a bit of angst in all of us. Change is inevitable, but change is scary, especially when that scare factor is enhanced and propagated by popular movies and social media. So it's only natural. I think we all, at the same time, we view this ethical dilemma as being not something that a current day presents, but it's something that we're looking in the future to be more prevalent. I think it's something we need to start caring about today and not wait until the year 2050. So some of people have described AI as the last invention where humankind is ever going to make, and it's basically driving us towards this point where artificial intelligence will eclipse biological intelligence, and at that point in time, humans will become irrelevant.
Now, in terms of ethics, when it comes to machine learning technology, this is another one of those sort of gray areas where we still have to sort of catch up and think about exactly the law and stuff that goes behind machine learning or AI. And we have to do this with a fundamental assumption that machine learning technology is not human. It's just another computer. Like, for example, I have an application called Make Your Own Mozart that enables you to generate your own pieces of music based off of the style of music from Mozart, Beethoven, their piano sonatas. Now, the thing is, people ask me, well, who would own the IP of the music generated by this neural network? And the thing is, it's a very difficult question to answer. But if you really think about it, it's actually pretty simple at its core. Now, the machine learning algorithm is just another algorithm. So when it generates a piece of music, for example, whoever owns the algorithm, whoever owns the rights to use the algorithm, is the one that owns the piece of music it generated. So, for example, let's just say I was a programmer and I programmed this for company XYZ, and now XYZ has the rights to use this application. It's their music once they generate it with a neural network. So there are many different concerns to work through here. This was just one of them.
As humans, we've always had, we have a history of creating technology that can be destructive to our human race. In July 16th, 1945, in the New Mexico desert, we've exploded a nuclear device. And we've been struggling with that, with containing that technology ever since. We're always living in the fear of us wiping out the civilization with that device. As humans, we've made an imprint on our planet and our environment. We have a first-hand in deforestation. We've dried up the entire seas. These are all things that have consequences that can be fundamentally destructive and terminating our society as we know it. We're now looking for plan B of relocating the human civilization to Mars. So artificial intelligence is no different. Artificial intelligence can be used for nefarious reasons and can possibly be our last great invention, or it can be one of our greatest inventions. It's how we apply it.
It's not like when you see in the movies AI is going to be some big, fearsome monster that takes us over. It's just a tool, and it's how we use it.
What are some of the ethical issues and concerns around AI?
Ethics issues is another big question. There's certainly many capabilities in automation and in AI that are emerging that are going to lead to all kinds of abilities to track humans endlessly, to identify actions and behaviors way beyond what's been possible before. And so we need to have a keen eye on what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and how these technologies can be used and impact society.
There are always ways to work around this, because technology fundamentally, since the very beginning of human history, there have been technologies used for good purposes and bad purposes. No matter how much of a good intent you put behind using something for good, it's going to be used and misconstrued in some way to be used for bad. Like fire. It's great for cooking food, but it's also great for burning people's houses down. But at the same time, you can use it to chase away the people who are burning people's houses down. So that's a good analogy for what we're doing with machine learning. It'll be used for bad things by humans, but we will use machine learning to counter that, but it won't itself turn into this horrible thing for machines or for humans.
The key point from my viewpoint is to think of ethics in artificial intelligence not as something that somebody else is going to do in the future. It's something we need to apply today. So, for example, today, police forces in countries like China and soon in Russia are starting to use glasses that do image recognition and do face recognition, identify a wanted person with warrants, for example, in a crowd, and be able to better enforce law and maybe arrest a person or investigate this further. That's a technology that's in use today. It can be used for great good of reducing the crime, simplifying the job of the law enforcement, or it can be used for nefarious reasons for a dictatorial government to enforce their will on the people, on arresting and suppressing dissent, on suppressing democracy and other. It really is. Ethics is not a technological problem. Ethics is a human problem. It's something that all of us need to care about. Recognizing this, leading companies in AI, in the space of artificial intelligence, have banded together to create, consortia. So companies like Apple, IBM, Amazon, Microsoft, DeepMind, Google, all got together and they're all advocating the best ways of applying ethics to this technology.
It's interesting, particularly in self-driving cars, there's a lot of ethical questions that are emerging that people are very worried about. The classic one is the trolley problem. If a car has to decide which accident to cause, right? If it has to pick between running into a sign and hurting passengers in the vehicle, or running into pedestrians on the side of the road but potentially saving the passengers of the vehicle, how do we make those decisions? And so it's a really interesting area, lots of open questions there, and it's unclear how we can properly define regulations so that different companies that are producing these vehicles all behave in a consistent ethical manner that meets our expectations.
There are also many concerns when it comes to, for example, self-driving cars. For example, if there's a self-driving car and it has the option to injure another person on the road or the person in the car, what would it choose? Or maybe a pedestrian. Now, the thing is, it might seem like a very, very difficult decision as to who would be to blame for the choice that the car makes. But again, we've faced these sorts of issues throughout history. Like, for example, if you take a look a few hundred years ago when humans would drive horse carriages, right? Let's just say there was a horse carriage driver and there was a pedestrian that made a weird noise or did something that the horse didn't like and the horse trampled the pedestrian. Who do you blame? You can't blame the carriage driver because, he didn't have any control over the situation. The horse can't be punished. What's the point of that? It can't understand. It doesn't have that sort of long-term memory planning ability. And the pedestrian, they can't be blamed because they were just doing what they were doing in public. That's not illegal. And so it's very, very difficult to work around these issues. But again, looking into the past, seeing into the future, we will be able to work around them.
So we hear about concerns and issues with AI, bias being an example. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So to start off with the bias problem, this is a very, very famous problem within the field of machine learning. And to give an example, let's go back to the Microsoft Surface facial recognition. So Microsoft Surface facial recognition is a great system, it works very nicely, but there's a little problem. It has a very difficult time understanding and recognizing the faces of people in certain demographics. And the reason for this is because, well, there simply wasn't enough representative data of those people's faces in the training data set that Microsoft used. And this is really something that's very difficult to get around.
We certainly have to be cognizant with AI systems of things like systematic bias and ethical issues related to AI. We need to be sure that the data that we feed to our AI systems does not have or does not contain bias, or that we are able to adjust for that bias so that we make sure we're not misrepresenting the population as a whole or preferring certain groups over others. And I think this is still a very challenging issue that we'll need to work through as these AI systems are developed.
First of all, machine learning technology is inherently biased. Machine learning works off of the fundamental assumption of bias. That's how machine learning technology functions. It's biasing certain input data points to map them to other output data points. That's just fundamentally how they work. That's the mathematics behind machine learning. There is also the option of directly modifying the data we feed in through techniques like data augmentation to enable less biased data. But there's a problem. You see, as humans, we consciously know not to apply certain kinds of bias. But the thing is, subconsciously, we end up applying such certain kinds of bias that we really can't even control. And on a massive scale, with hundreds of thousands of humans, this bias really shows up in data. And so removing it from data isn't a good option either. You need a kind of combined approach at solving the bias problem. There are numerous researchers working on solving this problem, and I'm sure there will be huge breakthroughs in this field very, very soon, but currently this is an active area of research.
AI is extremely powerful and can be used in ways that negatively affect society. To develop and use AI systems responsibly, AI developers must consider the ethical issues inherent in AI. They must have a realistic view of their systems and their capabilities, and be aware of the different forms of bias potentially present in their systems. With this awareness, developers can avoid unintentionally creating AI systems that have a negative rather than positive impact. Even outside the realm of science fiction, some conversations about the ethics of AI suppose that AI will become sentient, that is, become self-aware, develop its own moral code, and turn against its inventors. Nick Bostrom of Oxford University says in the very long term, machine superintelligence might eventually match human intelligence, and that when that happens, there may be risks to human society. Professor Stephen Hawking expressed reservations about the future of AI by saying, "The rise of powerful AI will either be the best or the worst thing to happen to humanity. We do not yet know which." Elon Musk went even further by saying AI is more dangerous than nuclear weapons. But there are also ethical issues concerning AI that must be addressed in the medium term, short term, and now. In developing AI systems, experts must guard against introducing bias, whether gender, racial, social, or any other form of bias. Early AI systems were prone to bias, an example being image recognition software reflecting the unconscious bias of its developers. Due to poorly selected training data, it identified scenes showing kitchens, laundry, and shops with women, and scenes showing sports coaching and shooting with men. AI-powered facial recognition systems provide another example of an unintentionally biased system. In one case, a system proved to be far more effective at recognizing individuals with lighter-toned skin than individuals with darker-toned skin. Again, this was discovered to be because the training data provided to the AI system was not sufficiently varied, featuring more individuals with lighter-toned skin than those with darker-toned skin. These types of bias can be extremely dangerous when used in real-life setting. For example, there are AI-powered risk assessment systems used in courts that help predict the probability of a person reoffending and hence provide guidelines for sentencing or granting parole based on the calculated risk of recidivism. There is concern that these systems may be biased against people of color. Developers of AI systems can guard against introducing bias by providing effective training data and performing regular tests and audits to ensure the system is performing as expected. Another ethical issue that has arisen is a person entitled to know when they are speaking to a human being and when they are speaking to a bot. As many bots are now indistinguishable from human beings, especially during short conversations, a lack of trust in AI systems can be exacerbated by lack of transparency. The sudden discovery that one is not speaking to a human being but rather a bot can be unsettling and can make the transaction feel unequal. Trust is key in developing useful, successful AI systems. For developers, there are 4 aspects of AI that help people perceive it as trustworthy. Transparency. People should be aware when they are interacting with an AI system and understand what their expectations for the interaction should be. Accountability. Developers should create AI systems with algorithmic accountability so that any unexpected results can be traced and undone if required. Privacy. Personal information should always be protected. Lack of bias. Developers should use representative training data to avoid bias and regular audits to detect any bias creeping in. You, as a consumer of services provided by AI, should take an informed and balanced view. Remember that every news article, every photo or video shared on social media, and every advert has been created by someone, and their motivations may be different from yours.
Can you talk to us about some of the concerns and issues surrounding AI?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of growing concern around AI replacing jobs and taking over some of the more automatable tasks or manual tasks. Now, if you think about the economics of things, it's very clear. We wouldn't think twice about regretting that the refrigerator was invented, or that the bicycle was invented, or that the car was invented. You know, you nor I would probably think of creating a time machine to go back to prevent the invention of the car from being ever invented in the first place. Just because it has transformed our lives in ways that we could never have imagined. In the same sense that potentially AI could potentially, transform, and it has already begun to transform our lives in very meaningful ways. And through that process, there are going to be inevitably some jobs that are going to be automated or replaced. Kind of like ice pickers who were trying to, acquire large blocks of ice cubes to bring it to, towns and homes so they could refrigerate their food. Those jobs were replaced by the refrigerator. And also horse-drawn carriages, they were replaced by bicycles and cars as well. So technology is always going to transform society.
My views is that, we've been through many revolutions where technology has had a profound impact on the type of jobs that humans need to perform, right? We no longer have horse and buggy drivers. There's a lot of changes that have had big impacts on the way people make their livings. And so AI is going to be no different. It's going to have a very large impact on automation and automatable tasks. So anything that's repeatable, even in the office setting, repeatable tasks, the document generation, in the industrial setting, repeatable manufacturing, repeatable assembly. These are the kind of jobs that are going to evaporate, but they'll be replaced with a huge set of new opportunities where we need people that understand how these technologies work and that can maximize their efficiency in their applications.
So that's a very interesting question, and it's one that we're asked very frequently in my area. We're often asked, will robots take over? Are they going to take away jobs from a large number of people? And I think our answer is, or at least my answer at the moment is, no. Robots are very likely, in fact, to generate new jobs. And so in the areas of robot maintenance, manufacturing, design, all kinds of new positions, I think, will become available. So I think the fear of robots taking away a huge number of jobs is perhaps somewhat unfounded at this stage.
What do we do with those kinds of people today, in which their jobs are vulnerable to AI? Well, I think there's also some responsibility for lots of, especially large corporations that are heavily investing in AI, to help come up with some sort of solution that can help retrain these people who are perfectly capable of learning new skills as well. I'm confident, and help them develop new skills to work in other jobs. And I think that's something that is required for large corporations. Part of their responsibility to be able to help reduce the negative impact of AI. So yeah, there's a lot of growing concern, and I think it's both a responsibility of corporations to be able to accommodate the changes in the industry, and it's also the workers who have to be cognizant that some jobs may be prone to be automated, and to never stop learning, to always try to look towards new skills.
A major ethical consideration for developers of AI systems is their effect on jobs. Some AI experts, including Nick Bostrom, believe that there will be a significant economic impact of AI. Many people are already concerned about the impact of AI on existing jobs and worry that it will change the entire employment landscape. Let's look at how AI can affect jobs, where jobs may be at risk, and where jobs are being created. AI can be used most effectively for jobs that are primarily repetitive or rules-based. This category of job could include bank tellers, salespeople, call center operatives, and drivers. People in these jobs may see demand for their skills fall and may need to retrain in other areas. For example, there have been tremendous advances in autonomous vehicle technology in the last few years. And as self-driving cars become more and more of a reality, the jobs of many millions of drivers around the world are at risk, some of whom have found new sources of income in the recent years by driving through the likes of Uber, Lyft, Ola, and Didi. People converse daily with AI assistant bots. Bots answer calls at call centers, answer questions on websites, perform tasks on mobile phones, and many other things besides. Bots can be used to perform simple tasks for many workers, freeing those people up to attend to more complex tasks or replacing them entirely, depending on the implementation. Alternatively, bots can be integrated into an organization's existing systems, providing help and support to people and making their jobs easier. But along with improving communications and reducing support costs for organizations, they can also eliminate many call center and help desk jobs. There is great concern among economists that developing countries are at even greater risk from AI encroaching into the job market, with low-wage jobs quickly being lost. Although this may be broadly true, there are some ways that a developing country with many people looking for work can participate in the development of AI and gain some benefits from the technology. For example, workers can prepare images that will become training data for self-driving cars by identifying parts of the images. This work does not require high-tech infrastructure or highly trained workers, but it can be used by some of the most sophisticated AI systems available today. According to a report by the World Economic Forum, it is expected that 75 million jobs will be displaced by AI, robotics, and automation in the next few years. However, AI also brings with it new opportunities and job roles that have not existed in the past. In fact, the very same report also indicates that AI will foster net new job growth, resulting in 133 million new jobs in the next few years. That's almost 60 million more jobs than will be lost. So with this changing job landscape, there will undoubtedly be a shift in society as people cease to work in certain professions, but need to find other fulfilling sources of income. A key part of this is upskilling and reskilling initiatives. Companies like IBM are working with policymakers, academic institutions, and training providers to help students and workers acquire new skills that will emerge in an AI-enabled economy. As AI permeates our daily lives, new ways of working will be discovered. Already, AI is augmenting jobs rather than eliminating them, bringing new jobs to less developed countries and bringing investors and small business together, regardless of location. Although the employment landscape will certainly change, it may well be for the better.